Could I ask the councillors who are in attendance to please state if you are present when I call your name? Councillor Owen?
Present.
Councillor Mitchell?
Present.
Councillor Newby?
Present.
Thank you. Could I ask the councillors if you have a proposer for a chair and a seconder, please?
Councillor Newby proposing Councillor Owen.
And Councillor Mitchell seconding Councillor Owen.
Thank you. Can I confirm we're happy with Councillor Owen to chair the meeting, please?
Yes, very happy, Mark. Thank you.
Thank you. I confirm Councillor Owen is appointed as chair of the meeting.
Thank you.
Could I also ask for officers to state if you're present when I call your name as well, please? The legal advisor, Matt Hall?
Yes, present.
Thank you. Principal licensing officer, Lee Staples?
Present.
Licensing officer, Dakota Ferrara?
Present.
Thank you. And licensing officer, James Watson? I think he's online. And also in attendance is myself, Mark Devon, Democratic Services Officer, and Sharon Sissons, Democratic Services Officer. I can confirm, Chair, that we are quorum to proceed with the meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this first Exeter City Council Licensing Subcommittee hearing being undertaken virtually in accordance with recently enacted government regulations during the current coronavirus pandemic. This meeting is also being live streamed to Facebook Live. Now, before we start the meeting properly, can I please remind all members and other participants to ensure that you mute your microphones when not speaking. And also, please avoid interrupting others when they are speaking. And if you could bear with me, I will call you and let you know when it's the appropriate time for you to speak. And I'll try not to be too officious in that respect. Okay, you've just heard the first item on our agenda this morning was the appointment of the chair, and I, Councillor Keith Owen, have been appointed as chair. Sorry, excuse me here. Yes, sitting with me on the panel this morning are Councillors Kevin Mitchell and Councillor Rob Newby, and we will be determining the application in item number 4 on the agenda. But firstly, item number 2 on the agenda is declarations of interest. If any members have any disclosable pecuniary interests that relate to this business on the agenda that have not already been included in the register of interests, please declare them before any discussion takes place on the item in question. The next item on the agenda is item 3, the Local Government Access to Information Act 1985 for the exclusion of the press and public. There are no part 2 items on the agenda, so we do not feel there should be any need to exclude anyone from any part of this meeting. We now move to item number 4 on the agenda, which is the application for a new premises licence for Souvlaki and Gyros. I welcome Mr. Yanis Tomasek to the meeting. Are you there, Mr. Tomasek?
Hello, good morning.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll be speaking to you shortly. You've heard the officers who will be here this morning, including Mark Devon, who's the Democratic Services Officer, and he will be making a written recording of the proceedings. I will now hand over to Matt Hall, the Council's legal advisor, to provide us with the legal advice and procedures for this hearing this morning. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, everyone. This is a hearing that's convened under the Licensing Act 2003. The procedure is relatively informal. The licensing officer, Lee Staples, will present a report, and then any questions of clarification regarding that report can be then asked of the licensing officer. Then we will ask the applicant, Mr. Tomasek, to present his application and make his submissions in relation to that. The committee then may ask him any questions they have. I may ask some questions together with the licensing officer. Once the applicant has said everything they want to say and the councillors and officers have asked the questions they wish to ask, Mr. Tomasek will be asked to sum up any further comments. At that point, he'll be asked to be removed from the actual hearing, and the councillors will then move to a determination. During the deliberation, the public feed will be disconnected and the councillors will deliberate on their decision. We will ask all the parties to stay available for at least 30 minutes during the deliberation in case there are any questions that need to be asked for clarification, and people are brought back to the live feed in order to have those questions asked. However, the notice will be issued within 5 working days. So once a decision is made, the applicant and other parties will receive confirmation of that decision within 5 working days in writing. Now, during the decision-making process, the licensing subcommittee will take into account the licensing authority's statement of licensing policy, the Home Office guidance, and of course the promotion of the licensing objectives. Now, just to ask, do you understand that, Mr. Tomasek?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, back to you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. I will now ask our Principal Licensing Officer, Lee Staples, to present his report on the application. Over to you, Lee.
Thank you, Chair. An application attached as Appendix A to the report has been received from the applicant, Mr. Tomasek, and he is requesting the grant of a new premises licence for his restaurant takeaway business, Souvlaki and Gyros, of 3 Buddle Lane, Exeter. A plan of the premises is attached at Appendix B. There has been 1 representation received, and this is attached at Appendix C. The representation is relevant to the licensing objective, the prevention of public nuisance, and has been attached to the report. In addition to this representation, the objector has emailed me again this morning, and I've agreed with the applicant, Mr. Tomasek, that I would read out that further representation. So bear with me just one moment. So the objector has come in with further information here, and they've said, thank you for contacting me regarding the application, and has apologised for not replying before, but they are unwell. They state that although the main points of the letter that they previously submitted are still valid and should be read alongside this, that they have thought about the application and do not want to be unreasonable and would agree to a compromise situation if some agreed conditions were attached to the licence if granted. They've then gone on to say that could these stipulate that all consumption of food and drink happen within the shop only or as a takeaway, not on the external built area or outside tables. The intention is then a drink will only be purchased with food within the main premises, and that the front door is kept closed with the music and noise levels being kept to a reasonable level that does not disturb residents when their windows are open on a warm day. They have further said that if you need to further clarify any points, then they have provided a mobile number, which Mr. Devon has a copy of. The report itself, it requests the supply of alcohol Monday to Sunday, 5 p.m. until 10 p.m. for on and off sales, and also for the provision of recorded music Monday to Sunday, 5 p.m. until 10 p.m. The applicant has set out steps that he intends to take to promote the licence objectives, and these are set out in the operating schedule within the application. The application was advertised on the premises from Friday the 13th of March and in a local newspaper on the 19th of March in the Express and Echo in accordance with the requirements of the Licensing Act 2003. The last date for representations was the 10th of April 2020. As Matt has already said, the committee should have regard to the representations, the guidance of Section 182 of the Licensing Act and our licensing policy. And the recommendation here is that the licensing subcommittee are required to identify what steps, if any, need to be taken to determine the application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. What I'd like to do at this stage is ask my 2 fellow councillors on the subcommittee this morning if they have any questions for Lee on the report he's just presented. First of all, Kevin Mitchell.
No, Chair, no questions at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Newby?
Again, Chair, not at this time, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, both of you. Okay, You've heard there about the additional submission by the objector to the application, and we will be discussing that when we come to speak to Mr. Tomasek shortly. So we now then actually come on to Mr. Tomasek, and this is your opportunity to speak on behalf of your application to the committee. So over to you, Mr. Tomasek.
Hello, good morning, everyone.
Kalimera.
Kalimera, sir. Yes, my application stands as it is. I'm agree with the terms and conditions. I'm agree with my neighbor who made the complaint. So I don't have any other further questions, or I don't want to point. I don't want to point anything. Basically, all I'm trying to do is just run a legit business, and I don't want to disturb my neighbors and the community here. Since I have my shop, I tried my best, to be in good relationship with my neighbors. I think I got nothing else to add. It is what it is. Basically, I'm just trying to get an alcohol license to sell a takeaway through the apps like Deliveroo, Uber, Just Eat. Obviously, I'm not going to sell. I said from the beginning that I'm not going to sell just alcohol to someone. The alcohol, which is going to be beer, basically a lager, I'm going to sell it only with food. So, for instance, if someone comes in the shop and asks for a beer or some alcohol, I'm not going to sell it. As I said, I try my best to make everyone happy. I even wash the pavement outside the shop, the street, everything. I put on my neighbor wall. I asked the permission to put a sign, saying this is a private property. Please don't sit in front of the window. Don't park your bicycles, because in the application it was stipulated that some people stay in front of their property or something like that. So I try my best to make everyone happy, and my intention is not to disturb my neighbors and the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tomasek. Can I just clarify one point, if I may, from the chair, before I ask my colleagues if they've got any questions to put to you? You've just responded then to the further submission from the objector to your application, and saying you were quite happy with what she was suggesting. Now, if I remember correctly, I haven't got it in front of me for a second, what the objector was asking, that you not serve any food or drink outside the premises. I can understand the issue regarding the alcohol, but are you not serving food alongside this additional part outside of your property, between your property and the public conveniences?
No, sir, I don't.
You don't. So you would be then happy, should the subcommittee wish to impose that condition, that there is no food and drink consumed outside your building?
Yes, sir, I'm agree with that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, can I just ask, first of all, Councillor Newby, if you have any questions you'd like to put to the applicant?
Chair, you've asked it and the gentleman has answered, so thank you.
Councillor Mitchell, do you have any questions for Mr. Tomasek?
No, Chair. You asked the question I was going to ask as well. So as long as Mr. Tomasek is happy to accept the objector's conditions, then he's answered the question I was going to ask.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I'm sorry that I'm stealing everyone's thunder this morning, but there we are. I wondered if I might actually come back and ask a question of Lee Staples on his officer's report. I didn't give myself the opportunity to ask any questions on that. Lee, in the report, as members will know, it's a two-part licensing application. One is for alcohol and one is for the playing of live music. That's right, recorded music, rather, for the playing of recorded music. Can you just clarify for everyone's benefit the legal position regarding recorded music on a premises such as this? Thank you, Lee.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so Mr. Tomatsek has applied for provision of recorded music, but legally he wouldn't have to make an application for a licence for this particular activity, and that's because of the Live Music Act that came in several years ago. This was part of the government's deregulation agenda, and the Live Music Act allows premises to play live or recorded music as long as it's less than 500 persons and before 11 p.m. at night. That activity is effectively deregulated, so you don't require a license for it. It is, however, open to individual applicants to still make that application. It still sits within the Licensing Act, basically, like that, so it can still be applied for. But as such, the Live Music Act gives a blanket allowance to undertake that particular activity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Lee. Therefore, we could allow that, and in effect, it doesn't make a lot of difference one way or the other under present legislation whether we agree to that part or not.
You do have the ability, if you wish to, though, obviously, because Mr. Tomatsek has applied for it, to apply conditions relating to that. So you do have the ability to do that. So the Live Music Act is a blanket requirement, but as a committee, you have the ability to refuse that part of the application or to condition it appropriately as you see fit.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Lee. Now, can I just ask our legal advisor, Matt Hall, if you've got any questions you'd like to put to Mr. Tomatsek at this stage?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I do have a few questions. Just firstly, is it the intention to deliver alcohol as well as food? Is that the idea?
Yes, that's correct, sir.
Okay, and but then you're saying you only want to serve alcohol inside the premises with meals?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay, that's fine. And in terms of the music, you only want to have recorded music playing inside?
Yes, sir. That's correct. Just recorded music on the radio with a really, really low volume, not live music.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, that's fine. And just looking at the plan for the premises, now, does that include any outside area within that plan on the application?
No, sir, it does not.
No, okay. Okay, thank you, Chair. That's the questions I have for now. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Matt. I'd just like to ask one further question, if I may, of Mr. Tomatsek. That's regarding the outside front door of the premises. Am I correct in understanding that under normal circumstances that door would be closed, apart from, of course, when people are wishing to enter or leave the building?
That's correct, sir.
Would that also be the case in hot weather? You wouldn't anticipate having to keep the front door open to allow fresh air into the premises during the height of summer?
On the hot day, I'm not going to play when I have my door open. I'm not going to play live music, sir.
All right. So therefore, you're taking on board the concern of the neighbours or a neighbour that it could cause disturbance if music were to go outside the building.
Always, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tomatsek. Could I just give another opportunity to my two fellow councillors on the subcommittee if they've got any questions for Mr. Tomatsek at the moment? Councillor Mitchell?
Yes, Chair. One further question, if I may. Can I just ask Mr. Tomatsek what measures he will put in place to ensure that the selling of alcohol to anyone off-site, so deliveries, that the individuals are of age to be able to drink that alcohol?
Of course, it's going to be an ID check for every customer. We're not going to sell alcohol to underage customers, and as I said, it will be an ID check. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tomatsek.
Okay, you're unhappy on that? You happy on that, Councillor Mitchell? Yeah. Councillor Newby, do you have any further questions for Mr. Tomatsek?
Well, just going on Councillor Mitchell's question, if Mr. Tomatsek, you're going to be using Uber or Deliveroo, will the drivers have to then request the ID from the recipient before delivery and then not withhold the beer if they don't come up to scratch?
Well, in the terms and condition of Uber, Just Eat, Deliveroo, and other websites who they do delivery, when you sign into their website to be a driver, you you give your consent that you're over 18 and you are legally covered by those companies. I don't know how to express myself, to be honest. Basically, it's their problem, but obviously it's my problem as well, because I don't want to sell alcohol to underage. So that's what
Okay,
I
get where you're going with this. Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Newby and Mr. Tomasek. I wonder if I might just jump around a bit, actually, and ask a question of our licensing officer, Lee Staples. Could you just confirm, Lee, there's no mention of this in your report. Can I confirm that, as far as you're aware, the City Council has never received any complaints about antisocial behaviour arising from the premises?
No, Chair, I can confirm I've got access to the records held by Environmental Health for these purposes. And just looking at the records now, there doesn't appear to be anything in respect of complaints with respect to noise. Like I said, the complaints on my screen are categorised and nothing is showing up with respect to that particular area.
Okay, and also I assume that you've had no representation from the police, so the police are not objecting to this licensing application?
No, I've not had any further representation from the police. I've just the one representation that I've referred to in the report. Okay,
thank you, Lee. Now, as already been mentioned, we've had this written representation from a member of the public with the additional item which has been read out this morning with the agreement of Mr. Tomasek. I'd like to ask my two fellow councillors if either of them have any questions or comments to make on this particular submission from a member of the public. Councillor Mitchell?
No, Chair, not at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Newby?
No, Chair, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, councillors. So if there's no further questions from members or the legal advisor, perhaps I could just check. Matt, have you any further questions to anyone on anything connected with this application?
I just have a couple of questions just to Mr. Tomasek. Have you got any comments to make in relation, any further comments to make in relation to the representations made?
No, sir, no, I don't have. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. I just wondered also whether have you ever had have you been serving food outside at all?
No, I have not served food outside at all. No, sir, I have not served food outside of the premises, never.
Okay, and just I was going to ask, perhaps Lee could advise. I understand there are conditions that are available in relation to delivery services. I'm wondering, Lee, would you be able to set out some of those to see if Mr. Tomasek would be happy to agree possibly in having those conditions on the licence, if the members are minded to insert them?
Yes, no problem. Thank you, Matt. So, yeah, we have dealt with these delivery schemes on a number of occasions in the past. In particular, Deliveroo were the kind of broke the ground with this. We had a number of conversations early on with that particular company when they appeared in Exeter, and the sort of conditions that we would generally be looking to in these sorts of circumstances would be along the following lines. So we have one particular condition is that the premises should adopt a Challenge 25 policy, and signage would be displayed at the premises so that the customers are aware of this, and conversely on the internet as well, where if they have their own website. This is something that Mr. Tomasek has put forward as a potential condition in his operating schedule, that he would have an age challenge policy. Another point would be that delivery services at the premises would only supply alcohol to a residential address. Now, just to clarify that particular point, that is so that we don't have people that are having deliveries to public areas and then drinking and causing problems in public areas. So that this would be to residential addresses only. Thirdly, that any alcohol accompanying a food order will only be supplied to the person who made the order and whose name appears on the credit/debit card. That effectively is a further age verification check, because obviously you need to be over 18 to hold one of those cards. So that's a further check there. And then fourthly, that the delivery driver considers the recipient of alcohol. If they are under 25, then the driver will request that the recipient provides recognised and approved photographic ID. In that context, that would be a passport, driving licence or pass card. and that alcohol will only be supplied if the delivery driver is satisfied that the recipient is over the age of 18. Fifthly, that the delivery of alcohol will be refused if the delivery driver believes the alcohol was bought on behalf of persons under the age of 18. And lastly, that the minimum age for all delivery drivers is 18 years of age. So those would be some conditions that you may wish to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Lee, you
Lee.
happy with that answer, Matt?
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Mr. Tomatek if he would be, whether he would be happy to accept those sort of conditions should the committee be minded to apply them.
Yes, I'm more than happy, and I'm happy with the 25-year challenge as I put it on my report. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. If before we leave, I've just got a few things I wanted to say about policy, but obviously I'm happy for you to go and ask if there's any other comments before I do that. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. I'll call you in a second to deal with that. Okay, if there's no other further questions from the legal advisor or the two members with me on the committee this morning, I'd like to ask Mr. Tomasek if you've got any further comments that you would like to make about your application. This is likely to be your final opportunity, Mr. Tomasek.
No, sir, I don't have. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Mr. Tomasek. Okay, I will now hand over to our legal advisor, Matt Hall, to explain the next step of the determination and any other issues he wishes to raise at this stage. Thank you, Matt.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, just to say, in relation to the Council's policy in respect of licensing, just to raise a couple of points that will be considered. The policy principles provide that residents have a reasonable expectation not to be disturbed between the hours of 11 o'clock and 7 a.m. And also that local residents being disturbed by a venue being open late at night is considered to be an issue when considering these kind of applications. Now, also in paragraph 9.3, it says, in addition, it is the policy of the licensing authority to strike a fair balance between the benefits of the community of a licensed venue and the risk of disturbance to local residents and workers of that venue. In relation to paragraph 10, which refers to the impact of licensing activities, it states the licensing authority will assess the likelihood of activity causing unacceptable and adverse impact, particularly on local businesses, by considering the following factors, which are the type of use of the premises, the proposed hours of operation, the means of access and egress to the premises by patrons, and the measures proposed by the applicant in order to avoid the nuisance. So that's the Council's policy. In addition to that, there is statutory guidance which refers to public nuisance and disturbance to local residents, and also that nuisance needs to be, if it's disproportionate to those living and working near the premises, then obviously that could be a concern to the committee. In addition to that, there are provisions that state that anything beyond the premises caused by individuals themselves is not the responsibility of the license holder or the premises itself. Okay, and in addition to this, just to say that if conditions are applied, if the committee are minded to apply conditions, these must be appropriate, proportionate and enforceable in order to be lawful, and they will consider that at that time. So that's just some of the policy considerations that would take place. Now, if everyone's happy, what will be happening now is that the committee will break. I will stay with the committee in case they need any legal advice or in case we need to call back the applicant. If we can ask everyone to stay around for 30 minutes just to be available in case there are any questions of clarification that are required. If not, then effectively the licensing authority will issue a decision in writing to all parties within 5 days, and that will be a reasoned decision and explained in that paperwork. Is that okay, Mr. Tomatek?
Yes, that's okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Over to you.
Thank you, Matt. At this point, we, the committee members, will now need to deliberate on the information that has been presented to us this morning. We will ask you, Mr. Tomasek, to leave the meeting at this time. As stated by our legal advisor, we would ask if you could stay near your telephone for the next 30 minutes in the event we have more questions and we need to call you back in to the meeting. If we don't call you back in, as you have just heard, we will be in contact within 5 working days with the outcome of our decision. We will also ask the licensing officer to contact you to notify you of the outcome. At this time, I will therefore conclude this public section of the meeting, and thank any members of the public who may have listened in today. We will now commence our deliberations, and thank you to everyone who has participated in this first virtual meeting of the City Council Licensing Subcommittee meeting. Thank you very much.